and Miss Independent by Neo. I don't know why I played those songs back to back, but I did. My name is Omoye, and you're welcome back. This is the final lap of the midday show, and I have some friends in the studio, and I remember them from way back. We had a conversation, a very enlightening conversation, even for me, about GMOs at that time, genetically modified options for food. And they are here again to talk about something different. And I have Joyce Brown. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
I have Cadmus Atake Enade.
Good afternoon, how are you all doing?
And Kome Odoma.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right, so Joyce is the Programs Manager, Health and Mother Earth Foundation. And Mr. Cadmus is the Project Lead, Fossil Politics. I'm going to come back and ask what that is. All right, but let's move on. And we have Kome. She is the Communications Officer here, and the three of them will be talking to us about something called agroecology. Now, agroecology, I do have an idea about what it is, but it would be nice to hear from the experts. So what is agroecology?
Okay, so thank you so much for having us here. It's like you said, it's an important discussion, and it's important for us because it concerns the way we produce our food. And with COVID-19, I think many more people are aware of how important it is to eat healthy food that is not just enough in quantity, but enough in nutrients that can help our bodies fight diseases. So we are talking about agroecology today as an option over the industrial system of farming that includes using heavy use of chemicals, that includes genetically modifying crops and other practices that don't help us produce healthy food, that don't help our soils either. So agroecology is actually, if we're going to give it a definition, it's a science, it's a practice, and it's a movement. As a science, it studies the way the different components of our ecosystem, of our soils, interact with each other. And then as a practice, there are a number of practices that our farmers have used over time, especially in the years before industrialization set in, that can ensure that people have the nutrients that their bodies need. And then as a movement, agroecology sees to the rights of our farmers to decide what they grow and how they grow it, instead of having some sort of external influence telling people what to grow and how to grow what we grow. So in a nutshell, that's what agroecology is about. It focuses a lot on the soil health as opposed to quantity of food. So it ensures quality and ensures the people who produce the foods, their rights are respected, and they do so in a way that works with them culturally and socially.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying, because I mean, when you cook or when you talk to most chefs, they tell you that, you know, while you cook, it's important to appreciate the ingredients. It's important to, you know, be careful with them, to use them to the best of their capacity. And if these ingredients are not of good quality, definitely the output will not be good. But what are these practices that agroecology is saying stay away from? Can you just enumerate them?
Well, top on the list will be the use of inorganic fertilizers and herbicides. And that's one of the problems we have with GMOs, because we have GM crops that are modified to withstand the use of herbicides, and that encourages the use of herbicides, which I'm sure almost everybody would understand that they are not healthy. So agroecology, one of the principles is that it is not input intensive in terms of using chemicals or inorganic fertilizers or using heavy machines on the farm. So agroecology encourages the use of natural fertilizers, biofertilizers, or biological pest control in controlling pests and diseases. That has to do with using the natural enemies of these pests and diseases on them too.
Okay, so if I get it correctly, it's like you want to kill a mice, put a cat.
Exactly, on
instead.
the farm.
You know, put a cat on the farm instead of using something else to kill the mice.
Instead of spraying chemicals that will disrupt the ecological balance in the soil or destroy other beneficial microorganisms in the soil.
Okay, so how is this agroecology movement different from the quote-unquote traditional system of farming?
Well, I will talk and I'll let my colleague Cadmus also chip in something. Agroecology is not so different from traditional farming because some of the practices under agroecology includes mixed cropping that improves biodiversity, which, because we are looking at agroecology today not just in terms of increasing food production or preventing pests and diseases, but also as a solution to climate change. And one of the key principles or key features that connects it with climate change is the fact that it helps to increase biodiversity, and that function is important because a lot of studies have said that soils that were farmed agroecologically, and that has to do with the fact that these soils are farmed in such a way that different kinds of crops are planted on the farmland, for instance. Whereas with GMOs and industrial agriculture, we have what we call monocropping, because those crops are designed in a particular way that they cannot accommodate other crops on the same farmland. So with agroecology, our farmers are able to plant maize, they're able to plant beans, they're able to plant something else that works with those crops on the farm. So that improves biodiversity, and that is the principle that helps our soils to be resilient to the impact of climate change, for instance. And then there are other practices like crop rotations, and this is changing the kind of crops you plant on your farmland from year to year, and that has been shown to break the cycle of pests and diseases on the farmland. I don't know if what was the question again?
I mean, how is it different from the traditional?
Yes.
I mean, and so far I think you have said now it's not so much different from the traditional. You still dig the ground, you still put the seed, but then you can do practices that would just be healthier for the soil, that would help the climate.
So the added thing to what we know as a traditional system of farming, if you remove the harmful chemicals that most of our farmers are now using on their farms, is that agroecology is a science. So agroecology is not blind to the challenges that we face today, because sometimes when we say, oh, don't use biotechnology in agriculture, and then people are like, how about the issues of pests and diseases? How about climate change? We know there are these challenges. So the thing is, agroecology addresses these challenges. So one of the key points we really want to make today is that agroecology actually cools the planet. Agroecology actually helps to trap carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the soil. So that's one of the major functions or major things that agroecology does. Agroecology helps the soils to be resilient to the impact of climate change in as much as it improves food production. So while the traditional system of farming, our farmers in their own way, they studied the seeds that they worked with, and they were able to combine those seeds and use those seeds in a way that somehow they solved some of the problems they had in those days. But even now, as a science, agroecology creates a platform where the researchers or the scientists work with farmers to identify which seeds are more productive and which seeds are not productive, and somehow they do the improvement that they do to the benefit of the farmers. But if you're going to look at the industrial system of agriculture, somehow these modifications are done independently of the farmers, and so farmers are just handed down technologies or practices that they don't even understand, and then you tell the farmer, oh, you have to wear this kind of coverall, you have to do this, you have to do that. You do so many instructions on those on how to use these crops that how our farmers are, they won't understand and they won't follow those instructions. So at the end of the day, farmers run into losses, run into debts, and some of them especially in places where suicide is very common, many of them kill themselves because they are not able to pay back. So agroecology is different in the sense that it's a science. It studies new improvement. Biological pest control measures there are innovations that have come as a result of practices of agroecology, and then it also sees to the rights of farmers.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute. Just 1 second. Keep it here. It's KU 92.7 FM. And we're back. So we are still talking to health and
Health of Mother Earth.
Health of Mother Earth Foundation. I call them Mother Earth Foundation. It's just simpler, but it's the Health of Mother Earth Foundation. And we're about to go to Mr. Catmos here. First things first, enlighten me. What is fossil politics? Now, this is something I have no idea about.
Okay. When we talk about fossil politics, we're talking about the issues that surrounds the extractive industries, the activities that causes harm to the grassroots people, most especially community people. And we try as much as possible to find out possible ways of halting extractive activities in communities, grassroots communities, because over the years we've discovered that extractive activities actually causes harm to the environment, not just the people alone. It causes harm to the agricultural produce, causes harm to the rivers, their coastal lines and all that. So we try as much as possible under the fossil politics desk. We try as much as possible to look at possible ways to halting these activities and giving these people a source of livelihood, a source of way out of the problems they are going through. So it's all about halting extractive activities, looking deep into the issues.
You know, when you say extractive activities, it seems just very abstract.
Okay.
So can you just enumerate what can be these extractive activities that can cause the community problems?
Okay, first and foremost, we're talking about the fossil fuel extractions, crude oil extractions from communities, and it causes oil spillages, pipeline blowout, causes seepages of underwater into water bodies, pollution, soot and all that. So it's really hurtful to communities and grassroots people.
Okay, and before we come into the how important it is to practice agroecology as a movement, as a science, we are in a growing world with a growing population. Now you have mentioned these things, and as much as they seem good, it would not, register in the mind of the average farmer as something that would be able to guarantee food security for a growing population.
Well, that's a common argument, and the truth is that agroecology can ensure that we have food security, and more importantly, agroecology sees to what we call food sovereignty. And food sovereignty ensures that people don't only have access to food, but they have access to food that is healthy, nutritious, and food that is culturally appropriate, food that is produced in a way that does not go against people's beliefs or what people actually want to eat. And then food sovereignty sees to the rights of farmers, because smallholder farmers, research has shown that they produce over 70% of the food we consume in the country and in the world. But then somehow people believe that, how is that even possible, that the smallholder farmers are the ones producing food that is consumed? But that is the truth. So agroecology puts the smallholder farmers at the center of conversations, of policies, of decisions and practices that relate to how food is produced. So currently we produce double the amount of food that we consume. But
really?
Yes.
So this is Nigeria as a case in point.
Yes. So most of the food, you can ask the agriculture experts, they will tell you that they've done the studies, they've done the analysis, and they see that a lot of food is being wasted. And that's because farmers are not getting as much support as they should get. The last time we were here, we were with a representative from the Agricultural Development Program.
Yes.
Yes. And then he mentioned that one of the problems we have is for lack of extension workers. So while Food and Agriculture Organization recommends, I think we have one extension worker to 1,000 farmers. 1,000. The reality is that we have one extension workers to over. It's a really outrageous number of farmers that get to work with one extension workers. I can't remember the details exactly, but it is known that we have that challenge. So if farmers get support in terms of having agricultural extension workers to support them, to help them through the farming processes, I think they will do better. And then they get support with credit schemes, with access to land, with infrastructure, storage and processing facilities. I think our farmers will be able to do better.
And you think that agroecology would not make food expensive, even though it's available? Would it then make food expensive? Because here is an argument for. Take for instance in the West, there is something called the farmers market, and the farmers market is deemed to sell organic food, food that are produced agroecologically. Now, there is also your normal grocery stores where you buy food that are produced with traditional farming methods, herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, and the rest. Now, the farmers market is considerably more expensive than the grocery store.
Well, that's because the system is not put in place yet to ensure that fairness in markets. Subsidies are put in for the industrial products, whereas the farmers are left without support. So if our government decides today that, okay, we're going to go fully into agroecology, we're going to support farmers, we're going to support in terms of credits and subsidies and all of that, at the end of the day, the food will not be more expensive. But it will only be more expensive if the support is going somewhere else. And then farmers are left to, struggle by themselves.
And fend for themselves. All right, so how does agroecology specifically now, because we have determined that as a practice, as a movement, it can feed Africa and Nigeria's growing population. Yes? Yeah. Now, so how does it specifically mitigate climate change? How does it then affect climate change? What does it do? You mentioned something about trapping carbon.
Yeah. How does it do that?
How does it do that?
Okay, so there are a number of practices that cease to that. There is one they call the use of biochar, and then there is also the use of cover crops, and then there is agroforestry. All these are practices under agroecology, and agroforestry, for example, has to do with the planting of small trees on the farm, and we all know how important trees are to the climate, to trapping carbon and all that. So a combination of all of these practices sees to the fact that carbon is trapped and contained within the soil. And yes, we are promoting agroecology as a climate change action, but then we also understand that for Nigeria, for Africa, and for the world, what's most effective is addressing the problem from the roots. And that's something we also push strongly under our fossil politics desk, because if we're going to get out of the climate change mess, we're going to have to leave the fossils in the soil. Because you can't keep extracting fossil fuels and flaring gas, and then somehow you want to believe that somehow climate change will stop. The truth is that it will only stop if we address the problem from the root, and that is to stop extracting more oil, more solid minerals, and all of those materials that lead to pollution of the air and of our environment. So yes, studies have shown that agroecology can help to sequester up to 40% of the carbon in the atmosphere, and that's something
that's quite a number.
Yes, that's something that we have to pay attention to, and we have to direct our focus on. So if we're going to continue running on the direction of industrial agriculture using modern biotechnology in agriculture, we are worsening the problem, because industrial agriculture contributes a lot to, in addition to what the fossil fuel extraction already does, contributes a lot to increasing the carbon emissions in the atmosphere. And it does that through the use of heavy machines, through the use of, through the production of inorganic fertilizers like nitrogen fertilizer and some other harmful practices that the industrial agriculture comes with. That's why it's important that we go the way of agroecology, which not only ensures food is available, it ensures that that food is culturally appropriate, and it ensures that the measures or the methods of producing food do not compound the problems, but rather help to mitigate them.
All right, so let's let Joyce catch her breath, and let me talk to Mr. Katmos for a minute. I'm just hearing, as much as the entire concept is not foreign to me, I'm just hearing about agroecology. Okay, I only did about a couple of years ago for the first time. Now, it's not very widely known. Now, how do we do this? I remember normal health science in school when they talk about, crop and, branch off to the botanics part of it. You see that the use of pesticides, for one, is a method, it's a way to farm. All right, it's a way to protect your farm, it's a way to ensure productivity. Now, how then do we then introduce this to people? Like I said, it's not widely known, and what we know, it's traditional. And now we want to start a movement that is saying branch off from the traditional and try this method. How then do we bring that to the people?
Okay, like my colleague said, agroecology is actually not very different from the traditional means of crop growing. The fact about it is that it takes its roots from traditional methods. Like when we talk about crop rotation has been something that our forefathers have been doing, and it actually helped to enrich the soil and at the same time control pests and all that. So way back those days, they actually don't encourage pesticide use and all other chemicals in their farms, fertilizers and all that. They make use more of natural things they get from their farms. You could imagine way back our forefathers, when they clear their farms and all that, they gather the grasses, allow it to decompose and bury it back. After a while, they brush their farms and replant. But you could imagine now that these days people no longer do that. Instead of them to go back to that method of farming, they will tell you, I have a large space, I can't just do that, it will be kind of expensive for me. They will just bring in pesticide, a spray that contains glyphosate and all that, and start spraying a selective pesticide and all that. So by the time you spray such chemicals in your farm, at the end of the day, it tends to destroy the soil nutrients, destroy the microbes in the soil that helps your soil to be well fertilized and all that. So agroecology is actually not different from the agricultural method. And going by pest control was actually introduced not very far away from now, about some few decades ago. But in the past, it was not being used. They used traditional methods. Like then, while I was growing up, my grandmother was a farmer and all that. When she wants to drive some certain pests out of her farm, she gets some certain leaves, blend them together, mix them in water and spray around the farm. It helps to drive certain pests out of the farm and all that. But these days, instead of us to go back to that route, we decide to buy pesticide and spray our crops, forgetting the fact that by the time it rains, when it drops, the chemical, it goes back into the soil, destroy the soil nutrient and all that. And outside that, the crops, if it's tuber crops, they absorb these chemicals, and at the end of the day, we eat it as humans, and it causes a lot of health challenges and health issues. So we need to start thinking of how best we can go back to our traditional methods that is linked up with agroecology to have good control of pests in our farms, good pest management, because agroecology actually talks about pest management using organic method, not chemical method or fertilizers and all that, using organic method. And these things are gotten, the natural resources are gotten directly from your farm.
So how do we bring this to the people? Now, this is one way. We are all talking about this now. It's one way. But how then can we take it further than this?
Yes. For some time now, Health of Motherhood Foundation, we've been going around institutions, around communities to sensitize them. We have a project area where we talk about dialogues on food systems. We go to communities, we enlighten the community people about food systems and agroecology. And we are really, really encouraged, because what we hear from these community people, some of them are even complaining about the pesticides they use, that it causes harm to their farm. So most of them have actually on their own start retracing their steps, but it's just that the number of persons that are into it are not really of wider range for now. But majority of the communities and the institutions we've gone to enlighten them more, they've actually adapted what we are talking about, and some of them are already putting these things into practice, continuing the education on what we call training the trainer. Some of them are already encouraging to train their fellow farmers about what we are talking about in agroecology.
Yeah, so you just answered my next question, because I was going to ask if there's an opening for training. So clearly there's an opening for training for Mother Earth Foundation.
Yes, there is.
Now, what are the barriers so far in training and reaching out to people? Have you seen that is a stop or a block to adopting these practices or the practices of agroecology?
Well, one of the first that we would like to talk about is in terms of policies, in terms of our laws. And that connects with the lack of enough understanding or awareness on what agroecology really is. But then there was a study we conducted last year on, we're looking at our climate change policies, and then we found out that there was no agroecology mentioned in those policies, in as much as it is important. It is so important that there was a UN report of the International Assessment of Agricultural Science, Technology and Development, that's the IASTD. It was carried out over 6 years ago by over 400 scientists from across the world. They advised, they found out that industrial agriculture cannot guarantee food security, and the reports that they issued proposed working at local levels, working with family farms, that's smallholder farmers, and that report actually endorsed agroecology. But we don't see so much going on in terms of policies in support of agroecology. So it's one of the barriers. If we have policies supporting agroecology, then there'll be more communication about it and more investment in that aspect. Other barriers include the fact that research in agroecology is not, we don't get as much support for agroecological research as we do for industrial system of farming or into GMOs, for instance. So that's one of the major calls we would like to make today for us to put policies in place that support agroecology. So what we are doing is actually part of our campaign for agroecology to be included in our national climate change policies. And we also, in addition to working with farmers and trying to sensitize them, we also meet with government officials, with policymakers, with groups of civil society organizations to try to share the knowledge we have on how agroecology works. There are lots of case studies that proves that agroecology can feed the world, and also proves that agroecology is an effective solution to the climate change challenge.
So how about the school system? Are you doing anything about the school system? Because
Yes.
I think it will start from there. If we start having, universities make room for agroecology as a study, if at the same time we are teaching the use of pesticides, we're also teaching the use of organic food production in agroecology.
Well, we wish that we can stop teaching the use of pesticides, at least the inorganic pesticides. But yes, we've been engaging with students and lecturers in especially the agriculture institutions. We've done that in a number of schools already, and especially the one we had earlier this year, that was in May, and it was in Ebonyi State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And we spoke first about GMOs, industrial agriculture, and then, as you would expect, a number of them were like, oh, we need to go this way, we need to adopt these technologies in order to feed the growing population. But at the end of the day, after the exchanges and the discussions, they came to understand that agroecology is actually the way to go, because it's not a solution that works with the snap of the finger, but it's something that in the long run is beneficial. If you want quick results, you would want to go the way of GMOs. But at the end of the day, you want a solution that would not complicate
Cause
issues.
more harm than good.
Exactly, will not complicate your ecosystems and will not make it difficult for future generations to have healthy soils and healthy food.
So speak to the government now. What would they do for you, as to make the agroecology movement a reality here in Nigeria?
Well, that would simply be to have agroecology mainstreamed in our policies, especially the climate change policies, and even in our food and agricultural policies. There are some in the research that we did, we saw that there are some mentions of practices of agroecology, but beyond that, agroecology should be recognized in its entirety as that effective and sustainable solution for climate change. So we want government to do that, and also to provide support for our smallholder farmers. They're giving support, but let that support be more, because we understand that farmers, the smallholder farmers, are the one feeding the world. There is currently a law that we are contesting right now, and even in court, and it's because it's called the Plant Variety Protection Law. And on the surface, it sounds like, oh, this is good. It protects the rights of the breeders over the crops that they improve and they produce. But if you look in deeply on some of the sessions, you will find that those laws actually criminalizes or puts our smallholder farmers in a very tight corner. And we believe that for a country where 80% of farmers are smallholder farmers, and the ones producing over 70% of food consumed, we should have laws that put them at the center and not just protecting the rights of breeders or international investors and all that. So we would like more actual support for farmers and for agroecology to be supported and invested in.
Thank you so much. This has been a very educating conversation. Let me see if we can get one phone call from anyone who has a question. And 07062 639275 09039 394427 and 0812-178-915. But we have space for one phone call. If you have questions, Joyce, Katnos, and Kome are here for you. 07062 639275 09039 394427 and 0812-178-9154. Quickly, Joyce, just wrap this up with a word to the farmers.
Well, I would like to encourage the farmers to recognize how important they are to our country, to food production, and to our future as a people, because recognizing that will help them to be able to speak up for their rights. Because it's one thing for us to see, oh, these are the issues, but then we are told, oh, you are not even a real farmer. So we need the farmers to understand these issues and then speak up. And let the government hear their voices to know that, oh, this is what we actually want. Because when we engage with the farmers, what they say is different from what the government say,
that the farmers say
or need.
All right, thank you so much for joining, for coming through. Thank you to Joyce Brown. She's the Programs Manager, Health of Mother Earth Foundation. Cadmus Atake Enade, he's the Project Lead, Fossil Politics, and now I know what that means. And Kome Odomo, she's been sitting here and lending support. She's the Communications Officer. My name is Omoye, and it's a wrap on the show. I'll see you guys here sometime soon again, yeah?
Oh, yes, you will.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about something else.